Make sure we get on. Okay, I had my mute on by accident. Thank you for your patience. So I was saying thank you everyone for joining and welcome to another episode of Wage. Tonight, me and my friend, the one and only Miss Io Peterson, decided to get together and just do a show in honor of Indigenous People Day, which is today. I'm not sure if many of you know because a lot of people seem to think that Columbus Day has been like substituted out for Indigenous Peoples Day. However, both of them are now currently in the United States being celebrated side by side. So, depending on what your location is, that'll let us know whether or not what you're celebrating. Oftentimes that's how they're celebrating it. So with that being said, I want to just bring you in and get you ready for the show. Get your pens, get your pads, be ready to take some notes, be ready to learn. Share the live, invite a few friends if you like, and if you'd like to come on and join us to be a part of the broadcast, you're welcome to. If not, you can also be interactive with the show by just putting your questions, comments, and concerns on the line on your post on the post. So with that being said, without any further ado, let's get ready to start our show.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like this. Baby, you a heart stopper.
Woke up in my city, yeah, I feel like Big Papa. I feel like Big Papa.
Nah, nah, nah. You gotta go like this, and like this. Baby, you a heart stopper.
Woke up in my city.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome. Listen, Miss Io Peterson, welcome back.
Hi.
Welcome back. So today is a very cool day in the United States, right? Indigenous Peoples Day. And we want to talk a little bit about what that is because, we hear this word, right? And it's like, okay, what is it? So I guess, Miss Io Peterson, we're going to go straight to the definitions of what it actually
Okay. That sounds like a great idea.
Okay, great. So we have some things that we want to share with you guys. This should be a very informational show this evening. I hope you guys like it. We're going to be checking comments regularly so that you too can be a part of this show. And for those of you who weren't here, just know that you are definitely able to join as a guest as well. So we're going to go, I guess, to Webster's Dictionary first.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so here we are. Miss Io, maybe you want to share a little bit about this. Do you want to, or you want me to read it, or?
Oh, I can read it. I just wanted to preface this by saying that this is the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, because what happens often is the definitions will change over time. So you have to go back to the original definition to understand the meaning. So American in the 1828 Webster's Dictionary was a noun, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. So that's very important because what they've done, like this definition says, is now it applies to Europeans born here. Whereas when they first came here, America was specifically to the Aboriginals who looked a certain way.
Right.
And we're going to get into the look, what that means too.
Okay. So do we want to go to the next definition now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, is this the next one? I think this is the next one, or no?
No, it's the same one.
Okay, let me go back and check this out for us. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. Go back. You guys bear with me because this was an impromptu show. We don't have our producers on with us tonight. So
we're winging it.
We're winging it again, right? So
yes.
let's get share screen and get these definitions up because it's very important that you do know what the definitions of these words are. As we move forward, it just strengthens the context of it all.
Right.
I'm thinking I got the same too. I hope I didn't. We're going to see. Okay, yeah, this is different.
Okay, yeah, this is different. So native, which is an adjective, it says I'm going to read the number 4 definition. It says pertaining to the place of birth as native soil, native country, native graves, right? And
Right.
the reason that's important because there's a term used nowadays, and it started in the 70s, called Native Americans. And all that means is someone who was born in America. In fact, in the 70s, when they first started using the term, it was just basically differentiating between people who were born someplace else and people who were born in America. Whereas if you want the Aboriginal definition or you want the Indigenous definition, that is not under the Native definition. So
Right.
there's a lot of confusion with that. When you hear the term Native Americans, people assume they're talking about Indigenous, Aboriginal, or Autochthonous Americans, but really they're just meaning Americans who were born on American soil. So it's important to know the definitions of words because they play games with words. They cast spells with words and their meanings. Because on top of that, there are legal definitions to words as well as spiritual. So it's like you have to use different dictionaries for different contexts of the word. So that's another thing too, but that's a whole nother story.
Right, right. Many people don't know. Maybe you can just give them a very brief synopsis on
Okay.
how. Well, I'll go straight to the most famous terminology that Malcolm X says when he says Plymouth Rock landed on us. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock; it landed on us. That a lot of people don't realize that many of us were already here, and that many of us now, African Americans,
Mhm.
are Indian, because a lot of people think that we all just came from Africa, and that's not always, the case. I don't know if you want to just mention.
Yeah, I'm gonna show a brief video that talks about that, but that was the whole reason they did that to that's why we keep getting our name changed too. Like originally, like I said, in some previous videos, we were called Indian. We were also called mulatto. We were called Negro, colored, and now we're being called Black and African American. And the reason they're doing that is in an effort to separate us from our homeland so that it's easier for them to take our land, our heritage, our culture, our spirituality. Because if we're not connecting ourselves to it, then they can take it. So that's the biggest reason why it's done.
Okay. Okay. So with that being said, I guess we'll just start the clip.
Yeah, just a little less than 4-minute video.
Yeah, it's very short, guys. So let's hang tight.
While speaking at a formal gathering somewhere off the grid at a discreet location, just after his return from crossing the waters, Malcolm X revealed some very vital, unconventional details on what Negroes, or rather African Americans, were truly considered to be as a nationality of race prior to being called or labeled a Negro.
Aborigine, which means what? Black folks. But you never find a white aborigine. Aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't let them be called an aborigine.
Malcolm X stated that the rock landed on us after he returned across the waters because he learned new things. He learned that the rock had truly landed on us and that we were from these lands. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. also stated in his I Have a Dream speech that we are held in exile in our own homeland.
The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
Now we have a lot of scholars out there, and individuals are missing the point. How can you be held in exile in your own homeland without it being your own homeland? The tens of millions of Black Americans, or rather Indians, who disappeared in 1492 did not all die in the Holocaust inflicted within America. Hundreds of thousands were shipped to Europe and Africa as Indian slaves. The whole slave trade story was given to all of us in reverse. A mass colony of Africans were not shipped from Africa to America. The truth is that Black Indians were shipped from America to Europe. They were then shipped from Spain to Africa as commodity for African resources. These black Indians, now mistaken as African Americans, were shipped back to America and classified as African slaves. This part of our history is what the school systems fail to mention in history programs. The American Society was an organization formed in 1816 with the purpose of transporting free African Americans, or rather Indian slaves, classified as Negroes back then, from the United States to settle on the west coast of Africa. During the decades, the society operated and transported more than 12,000 people to Africa, and the African nation of Liberia was founded. The term African American to refer to all black people was endorsed only since 1988, but was against the desires of the majority of black people. In fact, the term was endorsed by only 5 people, including Reverend Jesse Jackson and Ramona Etlin, leading the charge as a result of a gathering called the African American Summit, without the input of the majority of black people. Author Avis J. Smith went to the district court in Washington, D.C. to stand against this term, as well as against the notion that a small group of powerful individuals should be able to compel the masses into adopting it. The systematic destruction of the Native Americans, or rather Native Indigenous Aborigine people, and their way of life was not only one of recorded history's greatest tragedies, but as with the slave trade, deeply spiritually wounding to all involved. The utter decimation of their culture is one of the most shameful aspects of history, the extent of the damage still being downplayed and denied entry into textbooks and history lessons to this day. I'm just here to make you think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I thought that was a really good clip to share. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit, Ayo, about the clip and what motivated you to, want to share it. And before I even let you ask that question, let me just give a shout out to Dane Calloway for putting that together. That is absolutely
right.
He is a fantastic researcher. For those of you who are really into research and learning about history, I would definitely suggest that you go on YouTube to follow him. He puts regular content out. And again, it's researched, it's documented, there are receipts. So check it out, right? You don't have to believe or go along with everything he says. He even tells you himself, right? He's just here to make you think. So
right.
With that being said, Ayo, maybe you could tell us just a little bit about what motivated you to share that particular clip and the relevance on this day of it all.
Well, the reason I chose that one is because it's short, sweet, and to the point. Like, people can get a good understanding by the reference to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and also his ability to just condense everything into like a short piece of information, because a lot of times he could have videos that could go for 2 or 3 hours. And in fact, there are, I'd say about 5 people that I watch on a regular basis who produce content like this. And between the 5 of them, there are thousands of videos where they've done research. There, like one guy that I listened to, Kiri Mayo, who he actually reads the books, he'll cross-reference the books, and he'll give you definitions. Right. So it's like within his library, he has hundreds of thousands of books proving that we are indigenous to this land. And if we're not indigenous to America, they're even at the point now where they can go through your ancestral records and help trace where you actually came from. And a lot of times people are surprised to find out they are of European descent. Like they could have Irish or Spanish or French or Portuguese ancestors. That's what, and then the history is proving that to be correct, because a lot of times the books that they reference are like from the 1800s, and they'll use terms like swarthy or brunette or brown complexion. And that's to describe a lot of the historical figures that we learn about. And it's like, come to find out, they really weren't what we're made to believe they are.
Right. And good stuff. I just think that also as time goes on and those words, like kind of shape shift and
Right.
what they did. So I love that you started off with the definitions because it's really, really relevant because a lot of the old words that was used in a lot of the documents back then, once
Mhm.
the words change, definitions change,
Exactly.
today we can look at something that was written in the 1800s and say, okay, this means that. But in all actuality, it means something else.
Right, right. So it's crazy, like a term like gay, right? And before I want to say the 1960s, no, I'll say, yeah, the 1960s, 1970s, everyone knew the term gay meant happy.
Right.
Knew that to mean
Perfect
happy, but it
example.
has a different meaning now. And
Right.
so that's why we have to not just research and define words, you have to sometimes go back and see what the word meant before.
Right.
That's important, especially when you're reading like older texts, you have to find out the context of the word that's being used and what it meant when that text was written,
Right.
because you can be confused very easily. Another thing that they do is they will with history books especially, they will change the edition. So they'll take information out or they'll add more information. Like
Right.
one thing that happened, the one thing that happened when Barack Obama, I think he was president.
Right.
What Trump did is he researched and got his birth certificate right,
I
and
remember.
he proved he proved that Barack Obama's birth certificate was fake because it had African American on it. And we weren't using that term back in the 60s. You see what I'm saying? Because we were using the term Negro, and I think colored. That's what was on people's birth certificates in the 60s. When I was born in the
I
70s,
did not realize that.
yeah, that's how he proved that he was lying, like his birth certificate was fake. Another thing was the name that he had on the hospital. They had changed the name since the 60s. He had like the name they have now, but that wasn't the name they had in the 60s. So,
Who, Obama?
mhm.
See, and
Yeah,
this is the type of information that people are not aware of because I
right,
remember the birth certificate being challenged,
right.
but I'm like, oh, and see, this is how people get messed up too.
Mhm.
Everyday people, you go to work, you're busy, you're taking care of your family, your bills, and you're just living everyday life, and you're
Right.
not keeping always on top of everything that's going on. So that was really precarious to me. Like, wow. So he
Yes, he paid the money, did the research. Yo, I
that
thought it was
and
hilarious because I was never like really big on Barack Obama because at the time when he first came out, I was in college at the time, and I remember they
wow,
kept pushing him like, and mind you, my major was African American and African Studies, so I was like, this dude is not black. What are they talking about? But they kept pushing him on us like he's gonna be the first black president, blah blah. And it's like, where did he come from? That was the other thing. Because with politics, people, you've been watching them or you've been knowing about them for years a lot of times
right,
before they even think about running. He
right.
came out of nowhere. He
I
came out of nowhere. So it was like,
he did, and I think that the timing was right.
mm-hmm,
Really just like I not that I was so in love with Obama, but I was really, really in love with what it was that he stood for, right?
right,
It
right.
stood for, it was symbolic for actually hope in this country, right? Us
Hope
turning
and change. Don't forget that.
hope and change, right? Turning into a new direction where we were
Mhm,
finally starting to get away from some of the ugly, right, of racism
mhm,
and things
right.
like that, right? And and Moses said that he spoke so well also, and it was and that was a thing too. Like I don't know if he's trying to be facetious or whatever.
That's what Biden said. He's so
Yeah,
well spoken and articulate.
and I think that it was really important that we had a role model in the country at that time
Mhm,
that was black. So it definitely strips some of the credibility of everything that occurred when we, scratch beyond the surface to say, hey,
mhm.
wait a minute, this guy actually wasn't black. So
Right.
it's like if
Or
somebody
American.
so it's like if somebody playing a cruel joke, and
Mhm.
but then they'll say, oh, you know, Trump's the bad guy. Trump's the bad guy. And I ain't saying that he's not the bad guy, but what I am saying is this, like, wow, I think that there's a lot to be learned from listening to two different sides of whatever the debate is. Now, speaking of debate, keeping in line with an Indigenous Day, right?
Okay.
We're now celebrating, like I said earlier in this show, Columbus Day, because I thought Columbus Day was totally out. But in every place it's not. Now, I believe in Newark, the administration here actually made Indigenous People Day. Like, this is
right.
But it's not like that in all the other countries. I don't know if you can, elaborate on that at all.
I'm not sure, but it's funny you should say that because I was a big fan of the show Sopranos, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one episode, it was you got to remember, like, this is a day that Italians were really proud. This was like the day.
Right.
So it was funny. There was an episode on the Sopranos, and they were showing I can't tell you the year because that show is like kind of old, but they were protesting on the show downtown Newark Columbus Day because it was like, quote unquote, Indigenous Americans saying that Columbus didn't discover America. It was already here. There were already people here. And so Tony Soprano's son came home and was, articulating that to his father. And his father was upset. But then when he thought about it, it was like a thing of, you know what, you're right. This isn't, a day we should be proud of or whatever.
Wow.
So the discussion started back in the early 2000s in Newark, New Jersey. I know that much for a fact. People were talking about it back then, but then they made it official. I want to say about maybe 5 years ago. I'm not sure. They made it official here about maybe within the last 5 years or 5 years ago. I could be mistaken. It could be like within the past 10 years, but I know that this administration was on the forefront of that because as you know, Amina Baraka is an Indigenous American. And she talks about, Indigenous history. She's even showed us, some of the things that her ancestors created and some of the stuff that they passed down to her. So I know that the mayor knows for a fact, about his Indigenous heritage.
Right.
As far as that goes. But as far as like the rest of the country and the rest of the world, it's like you said, some people are still celebrating Columbus Day and some people are celebrating Indigenous Day simultaneously. That's all I know. But I can't tell you like what day or what year it started for this city and that city. And, I just know that now it's a discussion all over the world, whereas before it was just like pockets of cities or states that did it.
Absolutely. So again, good stuff there. Now I want to show I guess a little bit of this copper color.
Okay.
That we got going on.
Yeah, because there's a lot of confusion on what copper colored means. People have like an idea in their head and they have no clue of what copper colored means. And this will also clear up a lot. So that's an example of like a modeled piece of copper, right? It's like a copper sheet. And you see there are different shades. Like there's like a yellowish type of shade, but then it goes down all the way to like a dark brown, but all of it has like a reddish, hue to the background. And that goes to also show like in this country, especially in the South, we refer to each other as red and high yellow. You know what I mean? As far as our complexion. Like, look at that red gal, look at that high yellow boy, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So to illustrate what they were talking about when they said the red man in America or what copper colored actually looks like.
Right.
There's another image that shows like the gradations of the shades.
Right. I'm going to pull that up. I know it's probably an easier way to get to this, but Okay, here we are.
So you can see the gradations go from like really light to really dark. And that also shows you the diversity of colors within America because a lot of times people are confused when they see somebody like really fair tone. They're
Absolutely.
like always saying, "Oh, I could tell you had white people in your family," and that's not necessarily true because when they came to the Americas, people already looked like from the lightest shade all the way to the darkest shade. So a
This
lot
is
of times we're convicting our ancestors of participating in something that they didn't necessarily participate in.
oh, this is excellent, and I love how it illustrates from black, right? Um,
Right.
throughout all the hues, all the way to the light, and that has been a point of contradiction historically when
Right.
yeah,
Right.
referencing well, these people over here aren't black. That how do you know that? Everybody's black.
Exactly. You know, because like literally people have rainbows in their family and they came from the same two parents. You know what I mean? And this has been going on for hundreds of years. But like I said, sometimes we unfairly convict our ancestors of participating in race mixing when that's not the case. It's just
Absolutely.
that that's what they looked like.
And
So
people
many
who
different
don't
shades.
know, and there's
Mhm.
a lot of people who don't know, right? And it's the ignorance, and people don't like that word, but I always like to preface it with it just simply means not knowing, right? If you're
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with being ignorant. There's nothing wrong with that. It's
ignorant,
just the problem comes when you're willfully ignorant, when you don't want to learn the truth or you don't want to embrace the truth. So there's
absolutely.
nothing wrong with being ignorant. All you to cure ignorance, all you have to do is learn, do some
Yes, that's all you have
educate
to do.
yourself.
All you have to do
Mhm.
is learn. I don't know if you
So this one is about this is just I Binged it because I don't like Google, but I use Bing. So this is I typed in copper colored Indians, and they're showing you some of the pictures are black and white, some of them are current. They're just showing you what copper color actually looks like on skin. And like I said, for the most part, it's like a reddish undertone. That's what makes us unique from, the rest of the world, is that reddish undertone, and that's why they call us red people or copper or brunette, those terms.
right,
And
right,
sometimes even ginger. I've seen ginger used as well to describe our skin tone. Now, what they do to confuse us is they'll conflate those terms with hair color. So they'll say brunette for hair color or copper. And if you type in copper, I kid you not, the first thing that's going to come up is hair, if not metal, you know? So that's why it's like they do things. And part of the ignorance is not from people not
love
studying and trying to learn. They
it.
do it. Yeah. Oh, you found that. You found the
Which one?
episode.
Which one? Do you see the one that you were thinking about?
No, it's the same episode, but they just took like clips from it. So I think it's the one there was the clip is he was the son, which they're showing right now. He was downtown Newark and there was a protest. So I don't know if they have it, but you see they have the debate about Columbus Day. Oh my God.
Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look. It's
Okay,
funny.
yeah.
I'm a nut Jill, let me tell you.
Indigenous people are not
These
gonna
things get on my nerves.
Don't get me started.
Well, let's start with the idea of a parade for a genocidal colonial general. For a national holiday, no less. Such festivities are deeply offensive to
These
us.
are pretty broad charges. All I know is Italian Americans are extremely proud of Christopher Columbus, Admiral of the Ocean Seas and the Great Italian.
You know very well the compromised position we put forth. Now, if you people want to make it an Italian pride parade, we have no problem with that.
I mean, Western history does say Columbus discovered America.
The same America that put your people in bondage for 3 centuries.
But every culture has had to bear the pain in the making of what I think we can all agree is a startling economic miracle.
We cured polio,
I have to agree with Phil.
the right to vote.
Exactly.
Take my grandparents, 2 simple people from Sicily who braved the perilous Middle Passage
Oh,
to
Middle Passage. That's a term for the slave trade.
Montel. The Italian people in this country also suffered discrimination.
Earth to Phil. We're talking 300 years of slavery here.
Nah.
You know what's interesting about that is like what the Italian guy said is true, because the Italians went through the Middle Passage. We didn't, because we were already here. So what happened was like with history, and it's kind of like what Dane had described, they brought us to Europe and then from Europe to Africa a lot of times. But for the people coming to America, they're the ones who did the those perilous journeys in the boats to coming to America. And there's a book written, I want to say the early 90s by Stannard. It's called The American Holocaust, right? And he was a professor, if I'm not mistaken, out of Hawaii, I think. And he basically did a study about American history in the 14, 15, 1600s. And he was illustrating in the book how the transatlantic slave trade was actually taking place by the Europeans, the poor Europeans that were coming over here, especially the Irish. Like the descriptions that we were taught that Africans endured to come to America, that was actually the Irish that went through that.
Wow.
In the bottom of slave ships. But they weren't packed like sardines, like the narrative that we were taught, but they did suffer, from dysentery and malnutrition on their journey to America. So it's interesting that he said that while Montel's debating with him, but that actually did happen to the Italians, like he said.
I feel that is such a cheat, right? Just that we went to school with people that we really don't know anything about. In the push, right, to push the colonial belief systems on us, if you will, we lost the history of Hispanics and Latinos. We've lost the history of Irish. One day I remember having a small exchange back and forth with a person that identified themselves as being Jewish, right. On social media. And while I don't remember the details of it, I remember having to state to the person, how would I know anything about you? Like, we didn't go to school with any of you. I never saw
okay.
Don't you dare try to use that as a place of ignorance. Like, I should know better. How should I know anything about Jewish anything? How would I know?
Right.
And it's like that for all cultures, right? Like right now, we talk a lot about how the Ironbound section used to be predominantly Portuguese. Now it's predominantly Ecuadorian. Again, this is a group of people that we really don't know anything about. And I want you to say something about this, because this is a big deal with so many different immigrants coming into the country from so many different places. There's so many subtle differences, right? Between us. Like I said before, and I want to repeat it because I think it bears relevance. Like what us from down south, we're descendants of from slavery, right? At one point, and they would tell us, your grandparents. I know my grandparents would say, looking you in your eye was disrespect.
Right.
Hold your head down, and that came from that. But in other cultures, they tell you to look me and my
right.
Now you bring these people together, that's the conflict waiting to happen. Why are you disrespecting me by not looking in my eye? Or why are you disrespecting me by looking in my eye?
Right. You bring up good points. You know what? This reminds me of when I was in college and I had a professor talk about like testing, right?
Yeah.
Because there has been studies done, I want to say since the 60s and 70s, talking about how we quote unquote, as Indigenous Black Americans don't test well. But it's not that we don't test well. It goes back to what you were talking about before as far as perspective. And my professor was talking about how I forgot what kind of test it was. It doesn't really matter. It could be like the SATs, ACTs. It could be like the MCATs or LSATs. It doesn't matter. But the perspective of the individual taking the test matters. And he gave an example of like the word perm, right? And he said the answers could be like, the question is, what is a perm? And the answer could be like a product to make your hair curly, a product to make your hair straight, a product to make your hair wavy, a product to cleanse your hair. You know what I mean? So depending on your ethnicity would determine what your answer would be. But there's only one right answer. So for Black people, when we perm our hair, it's to straighten our hair. But for white people, when they perm their hair, it's curling their hair. So
Right.
what's the right answer?
Absolutely.
So cultural and ethnic inclusion as well as education is necessary in the climate that we have today, because we're just talking about Newark right now. In the
Right.
city of
Right.
Newark, I'd say there's no less than 200 different ethnic groups from around the world, no
Right.
less. It's probably way more than that, but no less. So we have to interact with these people. And for the most part, I can honestly say that we do a good job interacting with one another. We really do. We don't have too many beefs as far as person to person. The beefs like usually happens on the political level. That's when the beefs come, because it's like this person's getting hooked up. Why are they getting hooked up and we're not? That sort of thing. But
Yeah.
for the most part, we can talk. We can talk and get along with people.
Yeah. So I think that that's everybody's mantra, right? We can talk and get
Right.
with people, but we have no way of like truly examining the data, right? Of how many little arguments and skirmishes are happening.
That's true. That
You know,
is true.
right? So it's those little things that create tension and stress that can
Mhm.
start to, become cumbersome, and we not notice it until it's like, okay, well, what happened here? Because we missed the escalation from all
Right, right. No,
standing.
you're bringing up some good points, because you remind me of
Yeah,
in the 90s, I was watching the show Jenny Jones, right?
I
And
remember.
that's back when talk shows, they used to, go in the audience and ask the audience questions. So
Right.
I'll never forget, there was a lady from Newark, New Jersey,
Wow.
and she was talking about standing in lines, right? And she said, I don't know what's wrong with these Haitians. Like every time you go to the store, they always get to the front of the line. Like they don't know how to stand in line. But
Yeah.
that's a cultural thing, because they might not stand in lines where they're from. You see
Yes.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's things like that where I think in America, or in the state of New Jersey and the city of Newark specifically, we
Yeah.
could do a better job of teaching like civics, like what it means to be American. What is an
Right.
American? That sort of thing. Like even walking down the street, a lot of people don't know that in America, you're supposed to walk on the right hand side. Because if you're walking on the right hand side and the person coming towards you walk on the right hand side, then you're giving each person space to walk. I've
Absolutely.
noticed that people from other countries, they'll walk 5 deep across the entire sidewalk, not giving room for anybody to walk. So
It's a
it's
lot of
like
little
little things.
differences.
Yeah.
And like I said, all of these differences can like lead up to
Right. So that I've seen it in grocery stores where people are having arguments about somebody just walking to the front of the line. I literally saw that a few weeks ago at the ShopRite in downtown Newark,
you can
where
literally get into
this Hispanic lady went to the front of the line, and it was so funny the way she did it. It was like she went to the front of the line with one item. Then
Yeah.
her son came with one item, but there was I want to say quote unquote black lady, an older black lady, who was like, excuse me, there is a line. And it was a pretty long line. She was like, there is a line, but since you have like 2 items, that's fine. Then
Right.
her husband came with a shopping cart full of groceries. And the lady was like, no, no. It was like they literally had to get somebody who works at the store, because they were acting like they didn't speak English and they didn't understand, that sort of thing. But it
And
was hilarious.
just to say that I want to I think in reference to that, only because we have a little time, I'm gonna see if
Okay.
I can find something that I put up earlier as it relates to this that we're talking about, because if you put the immigrants aside, the
Mhm.
people who are actually native Norkers here have difficulties getting along. And I
Yeah.
think one
Yeah.
of the reasons why those difficulties occur, right, is because we're missing something that we shouldn't be missing. And I want to show a little quick video in reference to that. And even though it's not real deep in terms of the indigenous holiday, I
Mhm.
still want to share it because I think it has a relevance to what it is that we're talking about. So if you guys just give me a second here, I'm gonna pull it up. And again, it's relating to emotional intelligence, and then we're just gonna
Okay. Yeah,
catch.
that's important too. That's very important.
And some people are not even familiar with what it is,
The
so that's
concept, right.
like just try to
Right.
go over this and have a brief discussion about it. Let's see. I hope we can see that,
Oh
guys.
yes, that is so important in emotional intelligence.
Yes, and it's not too long, and it's very to the point. So, guys,
Emotional intelligence and empathy.
Mhm.
Spread love, not war. When a person is utilizing emotional intelligence, they convey empathy toward the other person. This means listening attentively to the other person's opinion and be slow to respond. Empathy is what enables people to conduct themselves in unity with other people. Discipline, discipline, and more discipline. Empathy and emotional intelligence follow the first attribute, self-discipline. The self-discipline that is the foundation of all future-oriented goals allows the professional salesman to set aside their thoughts, their feelings, and their emotions, and to instead focus on feeling what another person is feeling. It allows them to control their communication. Sharing is caring. Caring is a major attribute that is conveyed when using emotional intelligence. Individuals must care about the other individual's emotions and feelings. When this occurs, each person can get their point across in a respectable manner. Empathy and emotional intelligence follow caring. Caring is what underlies both the ability and the intention to act empathetically and with emotional intelligence. It conveys the authenticity of your caring. Step outside of yourself. Emotional intelligence requires a person to step outside of themselves to understand a different perspective and approach to the situation or person. The goal is to attempt to make a connection with the other person to get a positive resolution. Each human being needs to make a valiant effort to activate emotional intelligence in their lives in order to stay attached as the human race. Once again, is stop being emotional intelligence. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.
okay. So I thought that was really, really relevant.
It
Um,
is. It is.
yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to just start to share what relevancy. Why do you think I showed that? Like, why do you think that?
I don't know why you showed it, but I think it's very relevant in this discussion that we're having today because what I'm noticing and what I've noticed, because it's almost 30 years that I've been living in Newark, what I'm
Right.
noticing is that a lot of times people, especially nowadays, they come to America with no intentions of understanding what it means to be America, what America is, what people in America have gone through. You know what I mean? They have no intentions of doing that. Whereas at one time, to be an American, you had to Americanize yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like I don't see the empathy towards Americans. I just see the coming here and trying to get money. You know, it's a big money grab, but we're talking about a land that's still inhabited by the original landholders and who have gone through so much that you're not taking into consideration. That's what I have a problem with. So
Yeah.
I think that's why you showed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you're right on the money. You're right on the money. Look, hammer on the nail right there with that one. Hammer on the nail. And just to extend that a little bit, I think like we lack, and like I said, if you just sit the immigrants to the side, we lack, as Americans, a level of social
Emotional intelligence. Yeah.
that
We do.
even work with each other. Case in point, and not getting into that because I want to stay on the topic.
Okay.
But with Kanye West, there's so many different perspectives out there about him, and I love when you see a robust conversation where
Right.
exchanging ideas and sentiments, right? And it's like, okay, well, I feel that he's this, I feel that he's that, because with the shirt this and the shirt that. So not getting on that, but I'm just saying that's something that's in the social, atmosphere right now that people are debating about. But what messes up the debate is when people start name calling. You're stupid for your idea and da da da, right? And it's one thing that I always teach young students right in the beginning, that other people's ideas are just as important as yours. And when you hear an idea that you don't agree with, you don't ever have to belittle anybody. All you have to do, right, is become a thinker, right? utilize your
Mhm.
emotional intelligence and say, share with me why you feel that way.
Exactly, exactly.
You never know, right? It's about other people's perspectives. You never know what perspective somebody is coming from. And if you shoot them down right from the beginning, we stunt our growth, right? As a team of Americans.
Mhm.
Now you bring all of these other, now let's bring the immigrants back into this, right?
Right.
You have all of these, like you said, over 200 different groups of people,
In
right?
Newark alone, at least. At least.
Alone. And
Mhm.
people's background represent who
Mhm.
they are. People's cultural differences, all of these things create the person in who they are. So we can't like think we're going to get along in a way that we're not even willing to, entertain somebody else's point of view or
Mhm.
their thought processes, or even to just have respect. And and we are big on it. Like today, I noticed again, like I said on social media, just the
Mhm.
name calling. Oh, if you don't agree with me, I'm gonna curse you out. And it's like yeah, we're gonna stop this conversation because
Right.
you're too immature to continue with this. And it's a shame because if you don't allow yourself to get frustrated, you probably
Mhm.
have some great thoughts and ideas that you would be better off expressing in a way that
Mhm.
people can actually hear you out and people can consider those and perhaps even adopt those ideas into
Exactly. But
yeah.
you have to express, you have to be allowed to express it first. And I think that we should just take a moment to chill and reflect and just clean the slate, because what's coming out, um I want to say, in not just in America, but the information that's coming out is proving that what we learned is not true. And I'm talking about as far as time, like things they said happened thousands of years ago actually happened more recently.
Right, right.
Where people are from, it's just like the shape of the earth. It's like everything, a lot of things that we learned is like total fabrication.
Are
So we
you are you aware?
sorry.
Sorry, I wanted to just interject right there for 1 second. Are you
Mhm.
aware that they're even having debates about whether or not those slave ships existed?
Oh no, I've been aware of that, and in fact, so many people have said there's no way they existed. They were like, there is no evidence of slave ships, and I told you when I went back to college, there was no evidence that we came from Africa. There, like I said, when with my history, it started with slavery. They cannot show, and then the Africans aren't telling stories of people taken off of their shores coming to America. We have no stories of people, our ancestors coming from the shores of Africa to America. So it's like it's all fabricated, but it's done for a reason. So part of the reason is like one of the things you can do is take where you are now and then go backwards to
Right.
see where we came from or why we're in the state that we're in now. And a big reason for that is, like I said, this is so that the powers that should not be can take our land, can take our heritage, can
It's
take
all
our
about a land
culture
grab.
and our spirituality as their own.
All about
That's
power and
that is the reason why all of this is done.
right.
But even with that being said, it's not going to happen because right now, as we speak, there is a mass awakening that cannot be stopped. It
Right.
cannot be stopped. You
Right.
could talk to a random person on the street and they will tell you about what they just learned or what they just discovered. So we just have to be patient with one another, and we have to understand that we have all been lied to for a really long time. And we
And
just
that's
have to re-educate ourselves.
absolutely. And so, right, in re-educating ourselves, and thanks, that's a
Mhm.
great segue into what I was about to say. Um,
Okay.
how do we re-educate ourselves, right, when censorship is at an all-time high, right? Now,
Mhm.
people said that, okay, they didn't like what Trump was saying. Okay, but then you don't have to tune into him. Why did you take him off Twitter? And now, right, we're experiencing the same thing with Kanye
Mhm.
West. I don't know if you're aware, but he was banned, I think, today from Twitter and
Oh
Instagram.
my goodness, that's crazy. That's really
We
crazy.
already know that Farrakhan was banned. So, and
Yeah.
let's not get into all the when it was the injection era recently, and it was so many people coming out to say, "Hey, I got the jab, and I grew a third leg." It's like, oh, get them out of
Nothing to see here.
nothing to see here. And it's like, okay, when you start censoring people, when you're
Mhm.
censoring information, no matter how varied it is, right? You're taking away something from us in terms of education. Like we should be able to decipher and discern which information we want to keep, which we want to adopt. But in pushing one big agenda, we lose, we lose that level of education. So, I just, I don't like the censorship of it all. And I mean, there's even debates that are being had, and we're not going to talk about that on whether or not Harriet Tubman. Listen.
Look, Dan Calloway wrote a book on it if you want to read it. That's all I have to say.
I'm gonna let you guys, delve into whether Harriet Tubman existed. I saw there's actually somebody, and I don't want to get deep into this, but there's actually somebody in our community who wrote a book on Harriet Tubman. And there was a debate between her and another woman historian here from the city of Newark that I caught one day. And I'm like, I'm not touching that, right? Because
look, I don't really want to go there because the thing that, I don't want to go there because what they've done too with our history is they'll have us focus on one person when really we don't have to. We can look at people in our own lives, and by focusing on that one person, then they can continue to push their narrative. Because if we focus on people in our own lives, like if I talk to my parents, grandparents, great grandparents, or people, my aunts and uncles and great aunts and great uncles, then you will find that the narrative that they're trying to push isn't true. You see what I'm saying? So they had to create these people so that they could push a narrative to change because this is basically done for the younger people, and we are younger than our ancestors. So this was done to brainwash us. They had a different understanding of history.
Right. And people need to be aware of that, right? When given their opinions, that your opinion, no matter how deeply you feel it's rooted in research, it's only the truth, right? Until you encounter new information that's the truth, and then you're going
it's a fact. It's a fact until it's the truth. That's what it is. It's a fact until you can prove it's the truth. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So we're gonna go to a couple of these comments and
that sounds good.
So we have Yaisha. Hello, Yaisha. Thank you for joining us. She says, "Wow, so true. Little differences. I was told by a Muslim woman that you walk down the street as a woman, we are not supposed to move. The man is supposed to move out of the way. You don't move for a man."
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. But see, that's another cultural tradition being brought to America,
Right. And who says that everybody is supposed to adopt that because somebody somewhere did adopt that? But like you said, it makes sense, but depending on your culture.
That's not American culture. That's the thing. So I think what she's pointing out is how other cultures are injecting their culture in America. Because like I said, at one time in America, you had to become Americanized to be an American.
Yeah.
And you had to do away with your culture, your country's, what I want to say, citizenship and allegiance and all that stuff. But that's not what they're doing. In fact, you don't even have to become an American to become an American. You know what I mean? We have so many undocumented immigrants here now, especially in the tri-state area. This is like sanctuary heaven for them. So I see what he's saying.
I guess we just will say that somebody needs to move and just say excuse me. Right? Just do those magic words.
But that goes back to what you were saying, where contention can form, because it's like that's your tradition and that's your culture, but I'm not aware of that. So I'm going to be walking down the street like an American, not like a Muslim woman,
Right. But listen, it gets deeper, right?
Okay.
Just say, like I just said, I'm thinking, it's simple. You just say the magic words, excuse me. But now, I know personally, because I just got my hair braided in Africa.
Right.
The women talk very aggressive. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like, you're right. So now if somebody comes by and it's like, excuse me, somebody like, yo, you ain't had to say it like that.
Then that's a fight right there.
You understand what I'm saying? And that's how it could happen. So those little cultural differences are huge. It can be huge. Okay, so Moses Gilliam says, why are Black people envious and jealous of one another? We mean mug each other. Love is gone in our community. We used to dap each other. That day has passed. Ayo.
You know what? I think what's a lot of times what's happening is we will confuse people from other countries as being Black people a lot of times. So what we might interpret as mean mugging might be a defense mechanism that someone from another culture uses so that they're not messed with, attacked, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, people here
Treated
use the
unfairly.
same techniques. So
Yeah, yeah. Like I do that sometimes. Like some people are like, "Girl, you need to smile," because it's like, just leave me alone. Sometimes you just like want to be left alone. So that could be it. But
yeah,
it could be something where you're looking at this person as if they're a Black person, but they're not. You know
yeah,
what I mean? They could be from another country, and that's just what they do in their country. Whereas here, we, like you said, we act differently, and that's another thing that he's bringing up. Like, even our culture is changing because of so many people from different countries. Like, we
right.
don't interact with each other the way that we used to. That is so very true.
Yeah,
So very
I
true.
think that everything is so fast paced and stressed out, and that plays a role for certain. Me myself, I'm a hugger. I know I was
Yeah.
catching that bus for a period of time, and I'm talking to people on the bus, and the people looking at me like I'm crazy, right? And then somebody said to me, "They're like, Sheila, people don't talk on the bus." When the last time I got on the bus, everybody was talking on the bus. So I'm like,
Right,
well, what's
right.
this part? Like,
That's
listen.
how much immigration has happened since the last time you got on the bus.
Don't care where you are from. You are going to talk to me. I talk to the brothers at Exxon station, and they tell me about their country and the oil. And listen, I'm
Mhm.
a conversationalist. I am a person who loves to learn, and I'm going to talk to you. You will not sit by me and not talk. I promise. I'm an only child. When I saw people, I was like, oh, it's people to talk to. There's not only I'm going
Exactly.
to talk. So that's just me. I'm gonna hug. I'm
Right.
gonna talk. I don't care. I'm gonna be happy. But anyway, Moses asked. He has another question here. Where
Okay.
did you get your information regarding slavery? And before you answer that, Ayo, Moses, I want you to be specific because I'm sure you're asking this question from something that happened earlier. So if you could be specific,
Right, right.
we can get it in before time. It's all good. But I do want to hear the answer to this question. What shape is the earth? Now, this is definitely relative.
Nobody knows, but for the most part, it's a plane. That's what we do know. We know it's a plane. It's not spherical. It's a plane. And what the easiest way I can describe it, from my understanding, it's like concentric circles. So you have a circle in the middle, and that circle in the middle contains lands, right?
Right.
And the shape of the earth is like a pizza pie, right? With like a dome over it. The dome would be the firmament. And underneath the ground, there's more water underneath, but it's shaped like a pizza pie. The middle of the pizza pie would be like the North Pole, and the continents that we know of extend out from there. And then the South Pole would be the crust of the pizza pie. And then outside of the crust is another circle that has lands on it. And the circles just keep going and going. And that's what the universe is like. It's like an ever expanding set of circles.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
I
plug
can
in.
explain that.
No, well, I'm just gonna plug in real quick the Blueberry Cafe over on Central Avenue. That chef is the truth. Listen, I'm on my vegan flow a lot, so a lot because I still talk
That's
to.
good. That's good.
But,
Yeah.
like I said, I talk to everybody, and those brothers will swear that the Earth is flat. So what did Columbus do again? Anyway, um,
Okay.
anyway, Anise says that America doesn't have a real culture. We are from the land, not concrete. What do you think about that?
Um, yeah, America does have a real culture, but what's happening is because there are so many other people coming here, it's being drowned out and buried. Like literally, our culture is buried. Like there are over 90,000 cities that were covered in water, to make
Right.
lakes and reservoirs. We have so much of our heritage and history is covered by parking lots. And even like in downtown Newark, part of Essex County College, the nursing school part is covering an Indian, I want to say, like living like homes or whatever, and then NJ Pack is covering an Indian burial ground. So it's like we have culture, we have history, we have everything that everyone else in the world has, except there's no place like America because everyone else in the world isn't going to these other places. They're coming here.
Yeah.
And
And Newark even has a history.
I'm sorry?
Newark even has a culture.
Exactly. That's specific to Newark. Yeah, very much so.
And we'll talk about that in another show. Last question, I think, for the evening so far. He was more specific. I learned slaves were bought. I guess he means brought over on a ship called Jesus. I don't know. Moses got a lot of jokes. I don't know if he's serious or you know what I'm saying? Like Moses played too much. But he said brought over on a ship called Jesus. You know what? I can't with you, Moses. But like I said,
I don't know.
We're gonna let you research that, Moses.
Exactly. For his earlier question, I get my information again from the fact that I graduated from Rutgers University in 2007 with an African American African Studies degree, and since then I have read like hundreds of books, watched thousands of videos regarding this stuff. In fact, I have a newsletter that I send out every day with information regarding this, as well as our spirituality, as well as current events, like what's going on behind the scenes. So that's where I get my information from.
Good stuff. Great answer there. And I got my answers from the same place. You know what? I went to Keene. They weren't giving out majors in Africana studies, but they were giving out minors. So I have a minor, but it just motivated me to learn so much more. I probably have beyond a doctorate right now in it. Not only that, just from being participatory in so many different campaigns, I'm always talking to people. And the richest history that you find outside the books are knocking on those doors when you're meeting people and you're talking to them. And you're and witness, you know, about whatever it is, whether it's the rebellion or whether it's the Muslim movement here in the city of Newark, right? It's rich with culture, like I was saying.
There's lots of information coming out about that too, because I often tell people that Newark is ground zero for the whole conscious movement, like the whole conscious community. It started out of Newark, New Jersey. So
right. And I like, even, you know, with because you mentioned Amina, I think Baraka earlier in the show. She's one who taught me, hey, Sheila, you know, you got to understand, you know, white people played a role too, which I knew, but she put it in context in a way that I couldn't get away from. I'm like, okay. And every time she would see me, she would teach me something. She would see me, Sheila. I'm like, she like, look it up. I told you to look it up. So
she's big on that. She said, don't go by rumors or guessing. She said, always investigate, do your research, look it up.
I will always love her for that.
Yes.
We used to sit up like 5 hours on the floor listening.
On the feet of greatness, you know.
That's Newark. So that's where we live, and we have great things here. So Moses says, thanks, Ayo, for sharing information. That is amazing.
You're welcome.
And so one person says, let me see, I hope I didn't skip anyone's. Does she know where the so-called Native Americans are from? I hear they are actually from Mongol Empire.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. And I also did research years ago, and I discovered that they didn't actually, you know how they always say they came through the Siberian Peninsula? Like from basically from, you know, Russia to Alaska, the little islands or whatever. I learned that that's not even what happened. They actually came by boats. And a lot of times people don't know this, but it's easier to travel by the Pacific Ocean. So we have a lot more people on the west side of this country, or the west side of the Americas, going back and forth to the Asian countries than on the Atlantic or the east side of this country or the continents, going to Europe and Africa, because the Atlantic Ocean, an easy way to remember is the Atlantic Ocean is very angry, right? So it's hard to travel, but the Pacific Ocean is pacified. It's very calm. The waters are really easy to travel by boat, to and from. So a lot of times people were able to travel from the Pacific side of this country, and like I said, the Americas, over to the Asian countries and the islands that are, on the east side of the world, quote unquote. Because the world, like I said, the world is even shaped like we were taught. So
right. Like the map is not even what.
Right.
So listen, guys, I just want to just thank our co-host, Io Peterson, for joining us again this afternoon. I want to thank each and every one of you of the listening audience. If you have not already shared the show, please share. If you have any further questions, comments, or concerns, please plug them into the thread. We'd be more than happy to come back and address them. And until next time, listen, everybody, continue to wage love. Peace. Try to get this popping over here.
Town, a 14-year-old boy with a record of drug arrests was shot and killed. It was the 10th fatal shooting or stabbing in Newark in 10 days.
Another deadly shooting investigation is underway tonight in Newark. This comes after
guys, I think I'm gonna have to just end our show.
It was playing.
It was?
Yes, it was playing. I can hear you talking in the background, but it was playing. You could just do whatever you just did. It was playing.
Okay, guys, well, let's do it.